Hey. All right. So, hi, Chalice. How are you?
Oh, well, I'm excited. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited as well. I'm happy to have you here. So we're gonna get right into it.
Okay.
We knew each other for a while now.
hmm
Do you remember what year it was that we worked together?
I think that was like 2016, 2017, around there.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah,
2016, 2017, we're at the front desk
I
at a
was.
certain gym,
Yeah.
and I was a trainer. And one of the things that I found fascinating at that time, you were one of our front desk associates that enjoyed working out and would work out, which was great. But I didn't see you do some of the things that I'm seeing you do now, right? And so now, we fast forward a few years. I'm seeing you as a yoga instructor. I'm seeing you as a Pilates instructor, and not just a person who works out for their own benefit. So I
Right.
just want to talk about that journey and how you got there and what were the steps that you took and what drove you to doing these things.
Yeah.
But before we get there, where what does your name mean? What does chalice mean?
Chalice is the Holy Grail. So in
I
Catholic
love that.
churches, you drink communion out of a chalice. So honestly, I'm a gift from God.
You are a gift from God. That is correct. Okay, I like that. I like that. All right.
Yes.
Did your parents tell you like why they named you that? Like where the
So
name came
I
from?
have two older sisters,
Mhm.
Chaz and Chelsea. They wanted to keep the CH going. Also,
Got it.
my parents used to be like us, what is it, Sunday school teachers, like way
Okay.
back before I was born.
Yeah.
So they were heavy into, I mean, I guess they're still pretty religious, but it was like that. So my mom didn't like Christina, no offense to any Christinas, and she didn't like Chantel, so she went with Chalice.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah,
well, chalice it is. Yeah. I always wanted to ask you that. Maybe I did back then, but
yeah,
forgot
it's been
how
a
we got to
while.
talk about it.
It's all good.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me a little bit about the journey. Where did it start? Was it yoga? Was it Pilates? What came first?
Well, so I have a dance background, so I went to school for dance. That is what my degree is in, and so I even when I was working at that gym, I was dancing. So I was always had a movement background. I did
Mm,
Pilates in college, but it never really stuck for me. And then yoga, once I stopped working at that gym, I went to start working at another yoga studio in New York as well. And then I eventually became like a manager and I was working there for a couple of years. And I got to take free classes. So I would try yoga more. I liked what it did for me. I felt like it calmed me down because I was very chaotic back in the day.
okay.
So it
Okay.
really balanced me and grounded me out. Um, and I always liked it, but I always felt like the studios, at least that I was choosing to go to, it was like a lack of representation. There were
Mm,
never teachers of color, especially at that studio. Um, and it was hard. Like I would tell my friends, like, "Oh, come take class with me." They'd be like, "I don't know, I'm okay." And I didn't. I love that. So in the back of my head, I was just like, "How do we change this?" And I'm only can be me. I'm only one person, but like if I can make a little bit of a change, then I want to do that. So I had always wanted to get certified as a yoga instructor, but stuff costs money. I didn't
that's
have
right.
it.
Okay.
And during the pandemic, I lost my job like a lot of people did. But I was like on Zoom and taking like these free classes. And then there's a studio in Texas called My Vinyasa Practice, and they were giving out scholarships to Black and Brown, I think women only. And
Mm,
so my friends sent it to me and they were like, just apply, see what if you get in. And I did it. And it was all virtual, so it was online. And I know people prefer to do trainings in person, but because I already had I felt like a strong background and a movement background, I was like, this would be like a piece of pie.
mhm.
And even after like I got certified, I wasn't really sure that I still wanted to teach per se. I was just like, I wanted to just get a stronger, just stronger practice and knowledge so that I just know for myself. But then I was just like, no, there's still a lack of representation. Like,
Yeah,
girl, like, and I was just like, I want people to walk into a space and see people that look like them because I think that a lot of times when I look up to take classes, I mean, I'm going to go take a class regardless, but I do look at who is instructing or who's running it.
Hmm.
And not just because we look alike means that it's going to be, a great time, but that sense of community is what I was looking for. And I was like, I can't be the only person that's looking for this.
Right.
Um, so that was part of the reason why I was like, okay, girl, do this. And then I was walking in Brooklyn and there was a new yoga studio, BK Yoga Club. And I was like, let me see if they hiring. So I went in there. That was the first studio. I think it was the first studio that hired me. It was either them or the Fit In, which I still technically work for here
Okay.
in LA. But yeah, I just was like, I want more spaces that have, because I like to think that I'm a quality instructor. So I wanted
Okay.
more spaces that had quality instructors that could hold space for people. And coming out of the pandemic, it was just everybody was like flustered. Everybody was just, life was hard. And
Yeah.
I feel like I've always been really good at creating space where I hear people, I see people, and I was like, let's transform that into movement. So that's how I got into yoga. And then Pilates, I got into it this last year.
Okay. We're gonna
Yes.
transition to Pilates
Okay.
in a
Okay.
second, but I want
Okay.
to stay on yoga for just a little bit, right? So, how long were you working at your first yoga studio before you got certified?
Yeah, so I started because when I left that gym, I think I left the gym in 2017. I think it was March of 2017. And I started working at the yoga studio then. So from 2017 until 2020, I was working there, and I was working front desk, and then I transitioned into a manager position. So for those 3 years, it was mostly just me just going, taking class. I liked it. It was a hot yoga class, so I just loved like the heat, and I was like, okay, this is the vibe. I love the music because that was another thing too. I would take classes, and like, no offense, but the sounds of the trees and the winds that didn't get me going. I
Okay.
needed something that I feel like I could, if I'm not going to be able to connect with you as the instructor, I need to be able to connect with the music. So that was something that got me with the yoga studio. Um, and so, yeah, so there was that 3 year where I was just taking class. I wasn't really into it. And then during the pandemic, I was like, girl, what are you going to do? Like, your background is in dance. Like, your
Right.
background is movement. What are you going to do? Like, if something like this happens again, how are you going to survive? And I've always been into entrepreneurship. So I was just like, okay, yeah, really look into this yoga thing. When I got sent the scholarship information, I was like, really tap into this because you can make this. I'm really passionate about it. I'm really passionate
Right.
about helping people and having them come to that safe, comfortable space. I was like, you can do this. And I didn't know that was going to turn into what it's doing now, which is really great. But I just was like, if I can help one person along the way, like, let's just do it. So,
I
yes.
love that. So, how long did it take you to the certification,
Yeah.
the certifying body that you ended up with? And did you look at others? Like, how many did
Mhm.
you have to kind of sift through before you found one that made sense to you?
Yeah, honestly, I just looked through at that one because it was
Okay.
a scholarship, but I looked through it to make sure that one that it was going to be I can count it for Yoga Alliance because that to me was important. And with Yoga Alliance, that's just you're certified. It's not like just a certificate. So that was important to me first. I wanted to make sure that the school was accredited. And then like I looked at reviews, I went online to see like what the vibe was, but in my head I was just like, okay, as long as this is an accredited program, as long as I like what the program has to offer me online, I'm gonna push through. As long as it's not an okey doke program,
Okay.
and I didn't feel like it was okey doke in the sense of, like I said, I had a little bit of knowledge, somewhat of yoga, so I felt like as I browsed through the information once I got accepted for it, I was like, okay, this is legit. And that's part of the reason why I just continue to go with them. But I think also in my head, I was like, well, it's scholarship. So if I don't, love it, it's just my 200 hour. I could do my 300 hours someplace else. Um,
Okay. So,
yeah,
how many total hours do you need before you're certified?
200 hours. And the
200.
200 hours, you're doing practice teaching, you're doing your like learning labs where you're watching other instructors doing like workshops essentially.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So it's all that, and then just like your studying and reading up on the material, all that counts for like the 200 hours.
Okay. So, if somebody was interested in becoming a yoga instructor, like what are they in for? So how
Yeah.
much of it is practical versus how much of it is just reading versus how much of it is memorization versus application, right? Like how
Right.
does that break down if you could give us a little insight?
I'll say now these numbers might be kind of wild. These are gonna be kind of wild, but I'll
Okay.
say for the 200, maybe like I also a lot of programs that do like a 3 day intensive or any of those type of things, and you're getting all the information. So let's say you're doing like a 16-hour day, or that might be a reach, or like no, sometimes it's long like that, or like an 8-hour day essentially for those
Okay.
the 3 days. But then the other time will be the practice hours. So I guess you'll say maybe you're looking at like 80 hours of practice teaching.
Okay.
Um, and then the rest is like your learning labs. And when I say learning labs, like I said, like you going into observed classes, or you
Mm,
um going to like the actual workshop and stuff like that, where you're like learning like, okay, no, your knee needs to be here, or no, you need to expand this way, or this is this position and this is more advanced, or this is not. Um yeah, I'm not really good at breaking down hours, but
no, this is good. This is helpful.
somewhere along the line, but it is a lot of time, and it does, like I said, I was fortunate to do mine, or unfortunate, it depends how you look at it, online. It was virtual. I do think if you can get to an in-person training, especially if you don't really have a strong movement background, I highly recommend that. One, for community, because you're not just
Mm,
going through the program by yourself. You get that hands-on like adjustments, and like where you should be in space, you have that encouragement. I think it's amazing to do it in person. It's just I did mine during the pandemic, so it wasn't. But I think it's nice. And a lot of times when you do it in person, sometimes you can feed into whatever yoga school or program or studio they already have. So
got it. So did you find it to be difficult once you obtain the certification to find a place to work? I know you were telling a story of walking in Brooklyn and finding this
yeah,
space. Like, how long did it take you to go from certified to instructing?
yeah, it took me. I got certified in February, and then from February I was still doing like Instagram lives and just doing like
Okay.
people can donate to me because we were still inside. It was kind of cold. And then I started transitioning into the park because I didn't start working at BK Yoga Club I think until like September, October. So
Mm,
there was some time, because the thing about it too was like I wasn't experienced. So no one necessarily wanted to hire me off the rip of that. Because I would meet people, I'm like, I'm a yoga instructor, I'm good at my job, but they're just like, girl, how long have you been teaching? I'm like, this year. And they're like,
right.
I need some more seasoned instructors. And in one breath I understand that, but in another breath I'm just like, you also don't know if I'm good or not, like, because you
True.
don't know anything about me. Like, I might have just gotten the certification, but you truly don't know,
Yep.
so that was
Could have been a natural.
interesting, but I get it. But
Right. Right. Right.
So
Right.
it was a few months before I got hired, and honestly, I was like, based on the experiences that I was having in terms of trying to get people to hire me, I didn't even think they were gonna hire me there, because I was like, I didn't have the experience, but I was honest about it. I was like, look, I do have a strong movement background. I did work at a yoga instructor studio, so I am aware of all things business wise in that regard. But the thing about yoga is it can be such a personal practice that,
Hmm.
yes, we do want to keep you safe, and don't put people in positions that they can potentially hurt themselves, but it's really just, it is a physical practice, but it's really just another mind and soul connection practice. So to
Right.
me, I tell people all the time, like, when you come to class, if you want to lay there the whole time or just sit in meditation, that's your practice. You know what I mean? Everyone's
Okay.
here for different things. So I also, like, I think that also helped too, because I was just like, it's not necessarily about if you can get your foot behind your head. Like, that's not what this is about. So reminding people that was, nice.
Okay. All right. So it didn't seem like it took you too long to get
No.
started, and getting started for you seemed more like, all right, if nobody's going to give me these hours, I'm going to
I'm gonna
create
do it.
them. So you started doing classes online and then classes in the park. And then how long from classes in the park to I am now instructing inside of a studio?
I would say about 6 months.
Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah,
That's
six
not
to
bad.
6 to 7 months it took. And one thing about me, if I have my mind set to something, I'm doing it. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna create the space at the table. So,
Mm,
and that's just something that I've always been like, okay, it's not gonna work over here. Okay, I'm gonna try this table. I'm just gonna keep trying until something hits. So I wasn't gonna take no for it. To be honest.
you shouldn't. Good. I'm glad. I'm sure, all the people who are practicing with you
Hmm.
are glad you didn't
Yes.
take no for an answer.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. So,
Hmm.
okay. So now we are in a studio. Are you nervous for your
Oh my
first
God.
class? Like
Yes.
what's going through your head day one?
That first class, first of all, I'm someone who has super anxiety. Like, it's not as bad anymore, but like,
Okay.
especially during that time, like pandemic, like, I was super anxious. I was super anxious to be in a studio and not wear a mask. Like, even though they said that I could keep it on, but I was just like, they're not gonna be able to hear me, so I took it off. Like, I was like, ah, you know.
Yeah.
But I just remembered my why,
Mm.
and I just fell right through. Like, so that first, I think like the first few like minutes, you could probably hear the anxiousness in my voice, like cracking. And I was like, girl, you're in control. Like, they're here to be led. So you have to stand
Right.
up, like lead them. And
Right.
so once I got in it, I was in it, but I was like, I can't do this. It was so scary. Also, too, because it's like,
Okay.
it's not like a class in the park where it's like, I'm in control. I'm like, if these people don't like it, I might not have a job. So,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
Okay.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get over that fear of oh man, if people aren't feeling me or the vibe's
Yeah.
not right, I might not be here very long.
Honestly, I think like it was like the first three classes.
Okay.
Because also too, when I first got hired there, I was mostly subbing. So like I
Oh,
also
okay.
didn't feel like I was able to really have my own like, okay, this is my class and this is the vibe. I felt like I was filling in and I didn't know, and I barely knew the other teachers. So I was like, I don't even know what I'm covering, you know? So that part
Right.
was weird. But then I was also just like, I had to just talk to myself. I'm like, yo, you you are in control. Like they're gonna love you. As long as you stay authentic, they're gonna love you. And if they don't, that's their business. They don't have to come back. But that, you're not for
Right.
everybody, although I think I am. But you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's
for
just
sure. For sure.
yeah, so I was just like, it's not no big deal. I wasn't really sweating, but yeah, the first three classes, I was like, I don't really know. And then once I just had to give myself that pep talk, I'm like, you're here for a reason. They could have said no, they didn't. So embrace that. And one thing about people in Brooklyn is like, I feel like they show up and they show out. So, and they'll
Yes,
tell you in the
right.
moment if they don't really like it. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, we're great. This is good.
Okay. Well, that's a good sign, right? The people seem to
Hmm.
really enjoy what you were doing. I'm sure that feels amazing to take the time to try to get better and be given an opportunity, and then that
Hmm.
opportunity goes the way you want. So, all right, good for you. Good for you. So, at what point did you discover, hey, this is what I want to do, right? Like
Hmm.
I really enjoy this. I am going to go all in. This is a part of now who I am and what I do. When did that happen for you?
I will say I feel like that started to happen. So I started working there like maybe September, October. I feel like by January, I was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is what,
Mm,
because I just started to feel like I was making an impact on other people's day to day. But it was also
mm,
like, I felt like I was a healer healing other people, but I was also getting healed as well. So when I
mm.
was teaching, I was going through like a horrible, we weren't broken up yet, but I was in a really bad relationship. It was like really, really bad. And
Okay.
so I also felt like I was like almost rehabbing myself back within my classes.
Mm,
Because my classes are big on affirmations. I'm big on like reaffirming you. I say affirmations throughout the whole class. And I started planning affirmations based on what I needed,
okay.
and I shared it with people. And once I think because it was like one class, I was having like a really hard day, and I randomly just started saying these affirmations. I was confused. So I was like, wait, where are these coming from, girl? Like, this is not what you do.
Right.
But it stuck, and and people really enjoyed it. And I was like, oh wow, let's keep this going. So then at first I was like, oh, let me just look up affirmations for whatever theme I was doing. But I was like, no, what do you need to hear on this day? Because someone
Mm,
else probably needs to hear it too. And after class, like people would come up to me like, thank you so much. Like I really like, and it wasn't thank you so much, girl. It was like a thank you. You know what I mean? So I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And then I also always do like I close my practices out with like a self hug. I had one lady message me one time was like, I've never hugged myself, and I was like, oh girl. And I think about it too. I'm like, a lot of people don't think to hug themselves,
Yeah, I never do. So I get it.
you know. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, but it feels good to care for yourself if you don't have anybody else caring for you. So I just when all this stuff started happening, I said, oh girl, you're doing it. We're gonna keep this going. And I just if I say all the time, like if I can help someone along the way, then my living is not in vain. And I really
Mm,
just truly feel like part of my purpose is to help people feel their best, whether that's
okay.
physically, whether that's mentally, just create a space where people are feeling seen and safe. So yeah, once I started realizing like, okay, it's clicking, we're doing this, I was like, yeah, I just love the feeling. It gives me like a rush.
I love that. No, I get it. I get it. I've been a trainer going on 11 years, so
Yeah.
I completely get where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you, and let me not even put you in a box, right? Like
Okay.
there's so many different yoga practices.
Mm-hmm.
What do you teach? How did you decide to teach those versus others? Like, can you walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So I mostly teach vinyasa, which is going to be more breath to movement. That's just what I was introduced to. I also really enjoy vinyasa because I feel like I can make that as athletic or not as I
Mm,
desire. A lot of my classes, although it's big on affirmations, a lot of my classes are big on grounding and stability. So I add a lot of planks in there. We're doing a lot of crunches, but also we're flowing. We're having a good time. We're breathing. The music is vibes, always vibes. Like,
okay.
so it's a great. I feel like to me a great experience. You just asked me. I just went on a ramble. What did you ask me?
No, that's okay. We're
You see
talking
how I
about
do that?
the different practice yoga
Yes,
practices
yes, 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 yes,
and
yes.
which
Sorry.
one you decided to
Yes.
which
So
ones you may have
vinyasa,
decided
yes, because I started talking about music. You see how my brain goes? Um, so vinyasa, but I do too many things. So I'm also currently in my 300-hour training as well because I'm working to become a 500-hour certified yoga instructor.
okay.
So I periodically do like restorative flows. I'm big at combining things. So although we do a lot of breaths and movement, I always add a nice cool down or restorative where we're holding postures for longer. So typically with restorative yoga, you're holding postures for a much longer breath, whether
Mm,
that's like on like in a reclined bound angle or just something that's not too much on the body.
okay.
So I add a lot of that into the class, but mostly I teach vinyasa. But I'm also prenatal and trauma informed. So with that, I do work with women that are pregnant, that just are post baby. Um, and then with the trauma informed, I just keep it more of an inclusive with my wording, and trying not to make everyone feel safe,
Okay.
along those lines. But yes,
Got it.
vinyasa is my jam.
Okay. So you're talking about there's 200 hours, 300 hours, 500 hours. Like, what does that
What does that
mean?
even
And
mean?
what's like the
Mm-hmm.
maximum amount of hours like they can get
Yeah.
to?
So 500 hours typically will includes a lot. So it will typically include like restorative yoga. There's also like a spectrum of different types of yoga. Because there's like Kundalini, which I'm not too familiar with. Like I don't practice that, so I'm not gonna speak on it too much.
Okay.
But there's like Bikram, there's different ones, and typically you'll choose a focus of that for your 200 hour. So my focus was vinyasa,
Okay.
and that's only what it was. But then after I was like, I'm eager, I want to get things done. So then I did the extra course for prenatal. I did the extra course for the trauma informed. Technically, the trauma informed and prenatal for the program I'm going through is already within the 300 hours.
Okay.
So like prenatal, I think is like an additional either 40 or 80 hours, and like trauma, I think might have been 40 hours. So there'll be
Hmm.
different things. So everyone's 500 hour can look slightly different. Like my 300
Gotcha.
hour is going to include restorative yoga. It but it won't, because I'm not doing Bikram, so it's not going to include that. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of,
Right.
it's almost like you're going grocery shopping. You're like, oh, I want to focus on these things. And that's a part of what your 500 hour is, or your 200 hour. To me, having more like this 200 hour, bumping it up to the 500 hour, in
Mhm.
my opinion, you can get paid more because you have more knowledge, you have more experience, you can teach more, you're more knowledgeable, right?
Right.
So part of the reason why I'm bumping up my certification is because I don't necessarily need to go through the training to do restorative, but I want to be a great instructor and I want to learn as much as I can. So I'm going to apply that. And also now this gives me more opportunity. So if someone is looking for a restorative yoga teacher, I can do it. I'm
Right.
not just boxing myself in as just a vinyasa yoga teacher. If someone needs a prenatal certified, instructor, I can do it. That's part of within that package. So you just figure out kind of like what you want to add to it or not add to it. And then that's essentially what will make up those hours.
So it all falls under the vinyasa umbrella,
For
and
me.
then you're just adding in like you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then you're just adding on like I can do vinyasa for pre-postnatal. I could do
Mm-hmm.
vinyasa for like in a restorative way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like is that the gist? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And do the hours like what do they go up to, or is it like infinite? Like
I
how do
believe
you
it. So for the actual like certification and like I said, I don't know everything, but from my understanding, I think the like you are either 500 hour or 200 hour, but you're always doing that learning and development portion of it. So like after I hit my 500 hour, because I think also too Yoga Alliance requires you, I want to say every my numbers don't be right, but every 2 years or every 1 year, like for you to do a learning and development where you are taking another course or something that will go towards your hours. But
right?
the experience, I guess, is to keep your certification, I guess, intact. But like
Gotcha.
I've never met anyone that had like I'm a 700 hour yoga. You know what I
Okay.
mean? I think it just goes up to 500 hours.
Okay. Would you ever be open to different practice outside of vinyasa, or is that sort of like I want to master what I'm doing and
I'm
then
open
that's
to
it?
it. It's not something that's on the docket right now, but I'm for
Okay.
sure open to it. I'm just in general, like I would love to. I just the time is where's the
Yeah.
time? But I would
Right.
love to just go out and try different yoga practices. Honestly, I don't get to take classes as much as I would like to anymore. My schedule is just
Mm.
kind of insane. Like I'll do my own personal practice, but I don't get to go take classes as often as I would desire. So yeah, just taking more class would be cool. But also, yeah, trying different yoga practices. One of my friends teaches Kundalini, and she's like, "When are you gonna come take class?" And I'm just like, well, I don't know that it really personally interests me. So I'm not like
Mm.
pressed to do it, but I do want to try different, things, different movement practices within the yoga forum. So we'll
Okay.
see.
So what does a yoga practice look like for a yoga instructor? Right? So I know
Yeah.
teaching is one thing, but what does like an individual practice look like for you?
Yeah, for me, I'll just like roll out a mat. I really like my music. My playlist is really, really, really great. So I'll put on whatever playlist it is that I feel like I need to hear. And honestly, this is also how I plan my classes a lot of the times. I'll play music and I just start moving. I might
Mm.
meditate. I sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But like I'll start in like a down dog position, or I'll just like be in shavasana, legs wide, arms by my side, eyes closed, and then I just literally listen to my body and just move kind of that way. Um, and like I said, a lot of the times when I'm doing my self practice, that's how I plan my classes like for the week, because I just play around like I like that, because I just
Mhm.
organically will move a certain way just based on what my body like needs in that moment, and it works. I will say sometimes with self practice for me, I do get a little lazy and I do cut it short. Whereas if I'm in
Okay.
class, I force myself to do the full like 60 minutes or 30, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So that's why I need to stay in class more because I'm like, okay, this was fun. Let me go watch TV or let me go do something else.
Got it.
So
Got it. Okay. All right. I love that. That's the honesty, right?
Yes,
You gotta know what it's actually like.
yeah.
So you were talking about like it being a part of a healing journey, right?
Hmm.
Like when you teach, not only are you able to give that to others, but it also heals you
Hmm.
as well. Like, how do you think yoga does that? Why do you think it has that ability to heal?
I think because it's just a moment of turning to self. I think the stillness of the practice and the vulnerability of the practice really makes you turn within and just like, why are you here? What is your why? Why did you show up today? What are you hoping to gain? Your mind can settle for a little bit and you can just tap into, how do you want to show up in this world? What do you want to be? And it doesn't always have to be that deep. It could just be like, I just want to stretch. It's not that deep. But sometimes it is. A lot of the times people, and I'm not saying this for everyone, but a lot of the times people are who are coming to yoga, one is because they do want to just stretch, but a lot of the times life is hard
Yeah.
and they have a lot going on and they hear someone say, oh, I do yoga and it calms my nerves or it relieves my anxiety or just, whatever the case may be. And so they're coming because they're trying to find that escape or that safe place to kind of just calm their mind down and calm their body down.
Mm,
So I think it just creates a space for them to have that healing, have that care, physically, mentally, emotionally. Like I know in my classes, I always ask them, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing today? Where are you at?
right.
1 is your worst, 10 is your best, because it doesn't matter. It matters to me how you're doing, but you live with yourself. It's you and your body, not me. So how are you
Hmm.
doing? And I always say, I'm just like, and even if you don't tell anybody else that, at least you know how you're doing. So if someone asks you how I'm doing, I'm like, I'm at a 5 right now. I'm 50-50. I don't know which direction it's going to go. And I ask them that throughout class. And sometimes the number stays, it just keeps going down. I don't know. But sometimes it goes up where it stays the same. Like most times it goes back up where it just stays the same. But it's just, I think that the practice allows you to really turn into self and really take a minute to just care for yourself and be there for yourself, because like I said, life is hard. And I just feel like
Right.
there's never, people don't have that escape to really take care of themselves always because they're doing too many
Yeah.
things.
So is, partially why I think having yoga instructors and from all sorts of different backgrounds like speak, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there are parts of what you do that I never even considered. So
Mm-hmm.
I get the fact that people come because it's a practice and the practice is personal and there's a bit of healing from it, but just like the idea of checking in with yourself
Mm-hmm.
to just see how you're doing, and the
Mm-hmm.
prompt of someone checking in on you makes
Mm-hmm.
you start to think about checking in on yourself.
Yeah.
And then the honesty of, yeah, I'm actually getting worse as
Yeah.
this class is going
Yes.
on,
Like I need to
may
leave.
not necessarily mean right that it has
Right.
anything to do with you
No.
or the
Yeah.
class, but it's just
Right.
like the more I self-reflect, the more I'm realizing that I'm not okay. And
Mm-hmm.
that could be part or the beginning of their healing
Yeah.
like journey. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
great. I never even really considered
Mm-hmm.
that. So it seems like you started to figure this thing out, and you have a style that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier having quality instructors, and you
Yes.
don't think that there's enough representation,
Mm-hmm.
um, and not and alongside of that, enough quality. What do you think makes a quality yoga instructor?
Yeah, I think taking the time to perfect your craft with anything, going to workshops, taking like I said, I need to take more classes, but when I am constantly in class, I'm getting better every time I take someone else's class because I'm learning. I'm learning maybe what not to do or what to do. Another way of approaching another way of transitioning into something that I would have never thought. I think we
Mm,
learn so much from each other, and sometimes it can get really easy to just be like, okay, I got this certification, I'm doing it. I work at the studio. I automatically have clients coming in, so it doesn't really matter if I'm good or not. Like I feel like sometimes people, not intentionally, but I think we turn into robots sometimes, and it becomes
mm,
like a cycle. And you sometimes will forget your why and forget why you even started. Like, why did you decide you want to be a yoga teacher? You know what I mean? And I think I constantly come back to that sometimes because, like, working out here, I'm in LA, and there is a company that I work for, and I work in these luxury buildings, and I teach yoga. And there was one building that I was working in, and I was like, why am I here? Like, I didn't feel connected. I just didn't connect with them. They weren't connected with me. And I was like, it could just be they're just not, it's like my style of teaching is not really working for them. Although they said they loved the class. I don't know, whatever. But I had to tap back into my why because I just started to feel like it was starting to be, like, to me, boring.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't like that. Even like I said they were still good. They're great. They enjoy it. But I was just like, perspective, Chalice. How can you make this more engaging for you and stay connected to your why? And then I had to tap back in. I'm like, why are you doing this again? What's going on? Like, why are you teaching? And then I started playing around with my flows and, like, can you make it more interesting and along those lines? But
If you were to walk into a yoga class,
mm-hmm.
like, what are you looking for in terms of quality, right? Is it the way that they speak? Is it the music that they're playing? Is it the movements that they're picking? Is it the flow of the movements? Like, what's considered quality if you were taking a class?
If I were taking a class, the structure of the flow, are you keeping us safe? Because a lot of the times when people are taking group fitness classes, most of the people that at least take my classes don't move their bodies. They don't have a background
Mm.
in anatomy and all these things, and to know that your knees needs to be over your toes. Like, they don't know those things. So are you keeping us all safe? Are you reading the room? Are you giving a lot of modifications based on what you see?
Mm.
Because that's the thing. Like I said, people are trying to keep up. They don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing. So a lot of times people are moving faster than they should be. So it's just like, yeah, just creating a space where you're giving people options. You're not ignoring someone who just stopped moving because they just feel like they can't keep up or they can't do any of those things. Are engaging, are giving, like, proper cueing,
Mm.
adjustments, not just ignoring what's happening in front of them. And then creativity. I think creativity within flows, we can go from down dog to high press and lunge and warriors. We can do all that stuff, but how are you getting there? Is it flowing? Are
Mm-hmm.
you able to also, do you have to demonstrate everything, or can you verbally cue it
Yeah.
without doing it? Do you have to physically do it? Am I paying you to take class with me, or are you here to
Right,
teach
right,
me?
right, right, right.
So just, yeah. And like I said, being able to take up the whole space and, like, go around, and even if you're not giving, because I know some people don't want, like, hands-on adjustments, which is fine, but just still giving verbal cues to the adjustment that could be happening. Um, yeah,
Okay.
that's what I look for. The music, it doesn't, to me, determine if they're, like, a good teacher or not. I mean, it's just, are you keeping me engaged and are you keeping me safe?
So I know you're saying that you don't look for that in other instructors in terms of the music, but
Mm-hmm.
I know for your own
For my
practice, you're
class,
like, yeah,
yeah,
the music is a
it's
part of the
fire. Yeah. Um,
exactly. So
yeah,
how are you putting your playlist together? Are you
yeah,
picking instrumentals? Are you picking songs with words? Like, what is your
yeah.
process of finding the right music?
So first, it definitely depends on the studio that I'm working at, based on
Okay, I can
music.
get that.
So when I worked in
Mhm.
Brooklyn, I had a range of music. The playlist usually always starts a little slow, like slower, and then it builds,
Yep.
and then we cool
Yep.
down. But, like, I would have soca on my playlist. I would have reggae on my playlist. A lot of R&B, like indie, alternative music. Sometimes, depending on the space, I add a little gospel in there. It, to me, also really just depends on, like I said, the environment. I typically will not have anything that has any cursing in it or anything that's gonna degrade anybody, you know. I
Yep.
try to keep it positive for the most part, and just, like, upbeat, because I like to do a lot of power flows. So it builds, like, the song. I might have an instrumental in the beginning, but if it's an instrumental, it might be like, I don't know, what's that Kendrick Lamar song? The B don't kill my vibe. There's a nice
Yeah. Yeah.
instrumental
Yeah.
to that, so I'll have that, like, you know what I mean, like, stuff
Right.
like that. Because I also realize, like I said, I do get a lot of people who this might be their first yoga class, and I want the music to like at least if they're like, oh girl, this is hard, but I want the music to at least get them keeping them engaged. If they're just like,
Okay.
oh, I don't know, I didn't sign up for
Yeah.
this. Yeah. So
I
yeah.
didn't sign up for this.
They're like,
Nah,
ooh.
I like that. That's not, and maybe I'm wrong, but that doesn't seem typical
No.
of yoga classes. It
No.
seems yoga classes, there's a lot of winds and chimes
Yeah.
and nature sounds,
Yep. And I didn't
which I
like
can
that.
get. And you didn't like that.
Mm-mm.
And is that normal? Is that something that you think is unique to you, or like?
I will say there are more and more people I'm noticing because first of all, also too, there is more representation happening. There is a lot more black and brown yoga instructors now, which is amazing. So I do notice like a lot of people do like the R&B yoga, and stuff like that. I have not met anyone who has a playlist like me, but
Okay. Okay.
I do think that is what gets me. And I'm also very transparent. Like when I meet people and I'm like, oh yeah, I teach yoga. I say it's not your typical playlist. I am playing a broad, because the thing about it is some people are very like, I don't want to say old school, but like they want their practice a certain way. And I don't blame them for that, but I'm just like, that's not what this is. So if
Got
you
it.
want
You
the
tell them up
sounds of the
front.
trees, you might not like my flow, and that's okay.
Mm,
But yeah, I try to be very transparent. The first thing when they come in is I let them know about the music. I let them know that this is their practice, so move as fast or as slow as they desire. If they need me though, just raise their hand because I might just like I'll check in and be like, you good? Okay, cool. I don't want to like call you out or nothing. But if
right.
you do need me because you're like hurt, just like let me know. But yeah, do your thing.
How often do you switch the music up?
Mm, typically, it depends. Like I work in that luxury building, so I don't really play. I won't play like reggae or soca necessarily in there. And I won't. I definitely won't play like gospel and stuff in there. Unless like with the gospel music, I'll do it if it's not like super because people are weird about like religion and stuff, and I try not to be like too like I'm pushing anything on anyone. So if it feels like it's
Right.
like it has a deeper meaning, because I like to play songs too that I feel like you're getting a message out of this based on whatever the
Okay.
theme of the class is. Like I played from the Wiz Believe, I think it's in this song.
Oh,
Like towards the end of class. I'm just like, while you're
yeah.
stretching, like, yeah, tap in, believe in yourself. Like you are capable of all the things you desire. So
Mm,
I'll play stuff like that. And sometimes they'll be like, is this? And I'm like, yeah.
yeah.
So it just,
Okay.
but yes, for the most part though, I try to keep the playlist like that. But it depends on, like I said, where I'm teaching. Will be based on how sometimes it's more of an R&B playlist and then
Okay.
other times it's just like a mixed flow.
Okay. I like that. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Be unique.
Yeah.
And I like that you're not afraid to do it, and you understand that it's not going to be for everybody.
Right.
And if it's not for them, you make it okay for it to not be for them.
Right.
But you also give the opportunity for people to try something that's a little out of their ordinary. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
great.
Yeah.
What is so outside of the yoga practice, like what is your fitness like routine? Like, are you working out in a
Yes.
gym? Do you work out outside? I know in LA you
Yeah.
guys have better weather than us all year round. How does that work
Yeah.
for you?
So that gym that we met at, I just signed up for again. So I
Oh,
am
nice.
there.
Okay.
Yeah. I work out there about I'll say 4 to 5 days a week because I take a lot of the group fitness classes. Um
Mm,
and yeah, I'm constantly moving, but I'm teaching Pilates now too. So like and I'm not certified yet with that. I'm just doing my practice hours now. So I'm still
okay.
constantly like taking class or like working with my mentor group and teaching. So I'm constantly moving my body. I like to hike being out here. Like the weather for the most part is amazing. So I hike a lot, which is really nice. They have like the Culver City stairs. So I fight for my life, but I do it all. I try to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm moving. I'm moving and grooving.
So what are your fitness goals right now? Like, what are you working towards?
Yeah, mostly keeping my alignment. So I do have scoliosis.
Mm,
And so just trying to figure out where to position myself in my alignment where I'm not in pain anymore. Because sometimes I get really bad back pain, depending on like what
Okay.
movement I do. So just maintaining my alignment so I can just continue to keep my body safe and healthy. That's like my biggest thing. More cardio. I avoid cardio a lot. I take spin
Okay.
and like that's my jam, but like I try to avoid the treadmill and running often. I'm very lazy, so I like low impact movement
I like low
personally
impact movement because I'm lazy. Okay.
because like and everyone looks at me crazy when I say that, but I'm just like I could just like I'm active and I'm doing stuff, but it's not like I don't want to be doing all the ha
Hmm.
ha ha. So
Okay. 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 I get it. I get it. Okay. That's cool. All right. And
hmm
do you feel that yoga has helped with scoliosis or not really?
I'll say I think that Pilates has helped me more with my scoliosis.
Okay.
I think yoga has definitely like with chaturanga and like doing the planks and stuff, it's made me stronger. I don't wouldn't say that it's helped me. I also realize more and more as I am learning more about my body and alignment and all that jazz that I think that some of the pain that I was in because of my curve was because of some of the positions in yoga that I was doing that I had no business doing.
Ah,
Because there's certain things that I really just don't need to do, like because I'll be in pain. That's just the way it is.
got
Um,
it.
so I'm learning that more now as I'm going through this Pilates journey.
What are some of the most common like injuries that you have to adjust for like when you're teaching a yoga class?
Yeah, I'll have people that have mostly I get a lot of knee injuries, like, oh, I have a bad knee. Now the details of the knee injury, I don't know, but like as a general consensus, they'll have a knee injury. Sometimes the wrist is weird, so like they'll have a hard
Mm,
time doing like downward facing dog. So I'll modify that. Maybe they'll come to like a forearm plank, or they'll come to their knuckles. Um, if they do have a knee issue, I'll try to like give them if I have like depends on like what we have in the space. Or if they have like a sweatshirt, I'll have them put that underneath their knee or like roll up their mat a little bit if we have to do
okay.
something on the knee. Because sometimes I have a class that's planned and it's planned, so we're gonna have to just figure it out together. But then other times I'm pretty chill and I'm like, okay, I could just omit that. It's not that deep. Um, I also I've had people who had sciatica, so
Mm,
that is sometimes interesting. But typically, when people have like not injuries, or where they have stuff like that going on with their body, they know what they can and can't do anyway. So they're like,
right.
girl, don't worry about me. I'm in the corner. I'll be fine. But I'm just like, no, I still want to worry about you. So we're gonna figure this out together. And I'll give
Okay.
them like a modification, or I'll try to think of something fast for whatever it is. But that's why I always ask people too at the top of class, like, do you have any injuries or anything going on with your body I should know about? Because at
Right.
least that way it's already in the back of my head. And I'm like, if I was planning on doing something on our knees, but your knee, like half the class can't do stuff on their knees, we're not going to do it. Or I'm going to give them a modification and I can think about it in advance opposed to them doing it and half the class doesn't do it. I'm like, okay, wait, what's happening?
What's going on here? Yeah.
Yeah. So those are mostly it's usually a knee and wrist for the most part, for injuries.
Okay. And have you ever been in a class where you just felt like you lost everybody in the room? Like, they're just not vibing with me. This is
The
not
class the one class that I was teaching in this luxury building, we just weren't. I just didn't feel like we were vibing. Like, but it's crazy
going.
because when I was like talking to my boss, I'm like, I don't know that I should whatever. She's like, no, they love it. I don't know. I've realized that more and more I can't pay attention to people's faces during practices because in my head I
Mm,
think they all hate it because they're
okay.
thinking so hard. Like when people are working out or like doing their thing, like they're focused and sometimes they look so angry. And I'm like, do they
Mhm.
hate it? Like, what's happening? But then after class, they're like, oh my God, thank you so much. I can't wait. When do you teach again? Or so I'm like, I just don't know anymore. And I just stopped stressing myself out about like, are we vibing? Are we not? And I'm just like, if they come back, it's a vibe. If not, they'll find another vibe
Then they
someplace
don't.
else. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It really is as simple as that.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you also do one-on-one yoga, or is it
I
always
do.
groups?
I do privates, which I love because it's nice because like they're coming in for whatever it is that they desire that they want. Sometimes they're just like, I just like you and I just want to work and there's nobody else in the room, and I'm like, okay, cool. Other times they're just like, I want to work on opening up my hips more. Can we work towards that? And that's, what we'll do, or whatever the vibe is. But a lot of the times they just want to not have to share space with nobody else. So it's just me and them.
That's fair. Nothing wrong with
Yeah,
that.
right.
As the instructor, like, how different is that for you? Does it change what you plan? Does it change how you interact with them? Like, what are the differences you notice as a instructor one on one?
It doesn't. I always do like an intake, like, okay, what are your goals? Like, what do you want out of this? But I typically will create the same flow unless they want something a little slower. But I am more hands-on as long as that's what they want. Hands-on, really giving them a more like details about like, where their body is in space. And like they can ask me questions more throughout, because like when you're in a group class, like it's kind of hard to be like, should I be feeling this here, or should I? Because the thing too about group classes is I try not to give too much, right? I don't want to
Right.
overstimulate someone, for them to be like, okay, this was too much thinking, I don't want to come back. So like I try
Yeah.
to give like general corrections. If they're cool with hands-on, I'll try to give like one or two. Like I try not to over bombard them. But with a private, you get all of it. You get
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
things until unless I read your body language, or you're like, because that's the thing too. I'm constantly checking like, how you doing? How you feeling? You all right? How we doing? Do you want to pull back? Listen, I'm just like, listen to your body, advocate for yourself, because no one else is gonna do it. So
True. Okay. And now the Pilates journey. Where
yes.
did that start? How did it start? Like, origin story of
Let me
your
tell you
journey into
something.
Pilates.
I hated Pilates.
Okay.
I did not want
Okay.
any parts of. I didn't want a parts of it. When I was in
Yeah.
Brooklyn, so I still work for the Fit In, and most of the classes are Pilates classes. But I was brought in to teach yoga, so like I
Mhm.
avoided the Pilates reformer, the mat, the chair. I didn't want to do none of it because I'm like, this is hard, and I don't want
Right.
it. And when I moved out here, my boss, she was like, hey, there's a scholarship for, it's like another Black and Brown scholarship for a Pilates certification for mat through reformer, apparatus, all that. And I was like, okay. She's like, you should apply if you're interested, but it's like, it's your life. Do what you want. So I looked through it, and I wasn't going to apply at first. And I was like, Chalice, it doesn't hurt you. Like, if someone's going to allow you to have another thing in your back pocket to be able to teach, why not? Because especially with the place, once again, it's getting a little better, but it's so much lack of representation. Like if I thought there was lack of representation with yoga, Pilates,
Right.
it doesn't exist.
Mm.
And so it's getting better. It's getting better, but it just was like really, really just. And so I was like, I want to start adding different modalities of movement to my back pocket. So I was like, let me just apply. I applied. I had a virtual interview, and I was like, wait, I kind of hope I get this, because I like the vibe of everything. And then I was
Right.
able to get it. And but I will say it's such a longer practice. And I want to say this too to anyone who's listening, that it is not a quick okey doke situation. I started my training January 2023. And how the program that I went through, you do it. I had to do movement principles first, which goes over like grounding, basic alignment, stuff like that. That was a weekend of that. Then
Okay.
February was mat 1, and it went from mat 1 to mat 2, mat 3. Then it goes through reformer 1, reformer 2, reformer 3. Like it just keeps. It's a long process, but you have to do certain hours for each thing. So like
Mm.
the mat, I had to do 30 observation hours, 30 practice teaching hours, and then 30 observation teaching. There's something else I can't remember. Personal practice. I had to take 30, hours worth of classes. Then for reformer, it starts to get more challenging because you have to do 90
Okay.
teaching hours. Like every program is
Ooh.
different. Uh-huh.
Right.
Every program is different, but like the program I'm going through, which is through Balanced Body, I have to do 90 hours. But then I have to do my 30 hours. So I honestly thought that this was going to be a quick okey doke. I'm going to be certified, I'm going to be teaching, and I am teaching, but it's just taking longer for me to get certified. I teach privates, and because I'm not certified, I don't charge what I potentially could, because I'm just like, I don't feel like that's fair.
Okay.
But when you're working towards your hours, it's hard. That's another thing they don't talk about. It's very hard to get your teaching hours in depending on what kind of studio you're going through. Like the studio I
Huh.
am going through with my training, they don't really have the space for us to come in and just do the practice, because it's also a physical therapy office. So they have their own
Okay.
clients. So it's harder for me to get that time. So I was able to luckily get connected with a person who has a studio here, and they can rent the rooms out. So that's how I'm able to do like privates. But
Okay.
they don't talk about that. A lot of people are just like, yeah, become a Pilates girly. And it's like, yeah, girl, but you got to figure out how you're going to get these hours done. So
Right.
so then some people get discouraged. So I will say, if you are listening and you are in the journey, don't let that get you. There's a will, there's a way. You'll figure it out. And also just contact me. I'll try to help you as best as I can.
Hey,
But
I
it's
like
hard.
that.
It's hard. And I
Yeah.
wish that was something I had known, because I don't know.
Would you have still done it?
Yes, but honestly, I think I would have tried to figure out a way to maybe have done it, like come back to New York and just do it through my boss in Brooklyn, like, because she also has
Got
the
it.
teacher training, and I'm like, I feel like hers moves a little faster. So even if that meant I had to come back for a month or 2 months, I would have just come and knocked it out to get it,
Mhm.
opposed to this, because this is, to me, is a very long drawn. I know I'm going to be an incredible instructor because I'll have all the knowledge, and the more I
Right.
continue observing, and I know it's just gonna make me a stronger instructor. But I'm just like, whoo.
Okay. It's a lot. It's a journey to
Yes.
get all that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how far along are you now? Like, how much more do you have to go, I guess?
Yeah, so I'm currently at 55 hours. I have to do a total of 90. So I'm a
Okay.
little over halfway. It's not that bad. I think that the momentum that I'm on, I can potentially be done with my hours by the end of the summer, I think. So if not before.
Okay.
But yeah,
That's not bad. That's
no,
not
yeah,
bad. You
I
came a
think I can
long
do it.
way. So
Yeah,
we're,
listen.
yeah. All right. So you were talking about not people sometimes forgetting their why, and that can sort of make your class a little stale, or you just kind of go through the motions of
Mm-hmm.
doing it because it's just your occupation as opposed to something that you're connected to. So what is your why?
Yeah. Um, Part of my why is, so okay, I close out all my classes with the affirmations that you are deserving, you are worthy, you are loved, you are seen, and you matter. Um, and part of my why is, yeah, I'm big on, like, I want you to move your body and take care of yourself, and like everyone should be active and healthy, yada 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 yada. But part of my why is to make people feel seen and make them feel supported. Because I felt like I went through a phase where I didn't feel seen and I didn't feel supported, and I was just like, I don't like that, and I can't be the only person that feels this way. So how can I show up and create space for people to feel cared for, to feel like they matter, because they do? And that's my why. I want people
Mm,
to have an outlet that doesn't have to be necessarily drugs and alcohol or anything that's going to get them in a compromised situation. Um, and it can still build community. One thing I love doing is like, turn to your neighbor. Who is that? Say what's up. Did you speak to them? Like, I'm so big on trying to build community, especially since being in LA, because everything is so spread out. And like, you
right.
have to be so intentional about like meeting people, connecting with people. Whereas in New York, it's like, I'm making a friend because I'm sitting next to you on the train. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we're having these
Yeah.
experiences that you're not necessarily thinking of, but they're just like forced upon you. So yeah, my why is just mostly creating care and space for people to take up space too. Especially like, I'm always like black and brown, because I feel like a lot of the times we do have outlets, but it brings me back to that quality outlet too. It's like, yeah,
Mm,
there's things for us to do, but and we're showing up, but like, is it quality, or are we just doing it because we have the space and we can do it? So it's like, I'm trying to create a space where you're learning more about your body. Which I love about Pilates is Pilates, I think, it's like for every single human body. It's like, whether you have injuries, whether you don't, because depending on how you approach it, it's like you can rehab, you can do all these things. But I love it because I'm like, I feel like I'm actually teaching you how to care for you, not just yourself, like emotionally, but for your actual body. And it just feels
Mm-hmm.
really good and it feels really rewarding. Because I feel like I wish that I had that in the movement or physical world when I was growing up. Because like as a dancer, I especially coming from Connecticut, it was a very white environment that I was in. I was always one of one. And so I didn't feel seen because there was no representation. I didn't have those moments. So I'm trying to make sure that I can connect what I didn't feel like I had, and it's being received well. So I'm just like, keep it going, keep it going. I just want people to feel seen and feel like they matter and that they deserve to take up space and be in places. And even if they are the only one of, whether they're the only white person, whether they're the only black person, whether they're whoever, they still belong to be in that space.
Mm.
So
I like
that's
that.
my why.
Okay, I love that. So, if a person was interested in becoming well, let's stick with yoga since you're still
Mm-hmm.
working on Pilates. If a person was interested in becoming a yoga instructor, what are 3 pieces of advice you would give them?
Yeah. I would say the first piece of advice is stay authentic. Don't try to conform to what you see another teacher doing or what you think yoga should be. Tap into what it means to you and pour that out to other people. Make sure that you're staying within community in the sense of if you're working at a studio, use your resources, talk to your teachers, get a mentor. And if you're not at a studio, reach out to a lot of my friends that I've met on the yoga community. I've met them online. I'm not afraid to like follow somebody. I'm not afraid to send them a message or like, hey, I saw that you went to this program. I'm interested in doing that. Like, people reach out. My thing is the worst thing that anyone can say is no. So, and that can be
Sure.
hard, but I mean, you know, and that speaks more about them, I feel like, than you asking a question. And then the third thing I would say, remember your why. Remember your why. Why are you showing up to do this? How do you want to show up in this world? What's the reason behind all of it? Because that will translate more authentic to your clients, your students.
I like that. And now, if I am a person who has never done yoga before and I'm considering joining, like what should I look for
Yeah.
and why should I start today?
Yeah. I would say if you're newer, I would always look up a beginner class. Um,
Okay.
whether that's online, like, because there's so many classes on YouTube too, because that's another thing too. Like financially, it can get expensive. So like, I will go on YouTube. I will go on Eventbrite and just type in free yoga in your area because typically that will pop up too. In the summertime, there's lots of free stuff like that. But yeah, I would for sure look up beginner things. Even if you're online, you can do like a 10 minute, and that way it's not you don't feel like whoo. Because the thing about doing it online for the first time is you can press pause, you can stop it,
Mm-hmm.
you can turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also I would look up yoga studios near me. So I would also look up them on social media to kind of see if like what the studio looks like. If you're walking past the studio, walk inside, like as long as they're open, and just like ask more information about like what it is that they're offering. And just pay attention to how you feel like when you walk through that door. Do you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you belong here? Do you feel like they're dismissive? Do you feel like, so then don't go back? I mean, live your life. But I think how you listen to your body when you walk through a door, if you like the vibe, if you're like, okay, I feel okay, listen to that, go for that. Same thing when you're looking online. If you're like, oh, I feel like I'm gravitating towards this, I like it. Okay, so then check it out. But yeah, beginner classes. Always try to check a beginner class if you have never done it, because if you try to do it intermediate or advanced, you might not want to come back.
That is great advice. I might just take you up on that and start my beginner class
You know?
sometime soon.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for your time. I
Thanks.
really appreciate it. I think
Mm-hmm.
this was great, and I think you shared a lot of insight that I know I didn't have, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, our listeners gain something from this conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I have one request.
Please.
Okay. So you're gonna close your eyes. This is for whoever's listening as well. You're gonna inhale,
Okay, am
reach
I
your
doing
arms
this?
out. Yes, you are too. I want you to do it too.
I'm doing it. All right,
You're
let's do
just
it.
seated. You're not moving. So you're gonna inhale, reach your arms out to the side. And on your exhale, you're going to give yourself that big, tight, juicy hug. You are
Mhm.
deserving. You are worthy. You are loved. You are seen, and you matter always. Please don't forget that.
What a way to end. All right. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
This was amazing.
Good.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast and you enjoyed today's show, leave a review and share with a friend. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can connect with me on Instagram and TikTok at Betwn Sets. Share your story or just say hello. Until next time, bye.